All right, we are back this week. Welcome back to HashrateUp. This is HashrateUp. Today, I am speaking with an old face of the podcast. I just chatted to him about when the last time was that we recorded. Today, we have Medi Naseri on from now LōD. Hi, Medi. How are you doing?
Hey Jesse, it's great to be back. We were
Yeah,
just chatting. It was 18, 20 months ago that we
yeah,
had the conversation on the last episode.
yeah.
But it's
December
fantastic to
2020,
be back.
December 2023, right?
Yeah, we are still alive.
Yeah, we're still around. Because we're not mining ourselves. That's why we're still around, I think.
I have a very cool gift
Um,
from a Bitcoiner friend. It says I survived Fimbul weather. That's a Nordic thing, I guess. Like I survived the big winter, and I'm one of the guys who
yeah,
survived the Bitcoin winter.
winter winter came and I'm still here. Um, really, today, back then when we recorded, you were still running a company then called Lincoin.
Mhm.
You just told me off camera that you've experienced crazy growth. Now you're at LōD, or you've rebranded to LōD. We also briefly met in person in Vegas, 2024,
Yeah.
at the WDMS, which was cool. And I think that's when you just sort of started out and had just done the rebranding. But maybe again, I think to spotlight your company a bit, give people just a highlight of what LōD is, what services you provide, and where you sort of fit into
Mhm.
the Bitcoin mining value chain. And I understand you guys also do other stuff, right?
Yep. So, hey everyone, Medi Naseri here, CEO, co-founder at LōD Technologies. As Jesse said, we rebranded to LōD over the course of 2024. Um, we initially started as a Bitcoin mining pool, FPPS Bitcoin mining pool, known as Lincoin pool. It's still around, it's still um, thriving and growing. But we had a big expansion that happened to us over the course of past almost 2 years, when we noticed that Bitcoin mining is a lot about energy. Maybe it's like 50% Bitcoin, 50% energy, or maybe energy is even more than 50%. So we decided to focus a lot more on energy aspect in order to enable these Bitcoin mining data centers source the right electrons from the grid or manage the flow of energy that is going into their ASIC devices. So that has been our focus, like main focus over the course of past 2 years. We're building some really cool products, features, technologies around energy and around computing in general, including Bitcoin mining. So happy to chat it out on
Yeah.
this podcast.
First and foremost, how much similarities are there? So if you service the AI and computing data center industry versus servicing the Bitcoin mining industry, how much? Yes, of course, they both consume power, um, but is it really that indifferent that to make it easy to bring it all under one umbrella, or is it not?
There are two different types of compute. Computations that are workload based and computations that are process based. Bitcoin mining is a workload based computing process. So let's say the mining pool sends a job to the ASIC device. The ASIC device does the hashing, send the result back, usually in like in a few seconds, depending on how you set the difficulty on the device and all those matters. But usually within a few seconds, the workload comes in, process goes back. There's a second type of computing called, or as we call it, process based. It does not rely on external workloads, but that's a like local process that runs similar to AI training workloads or like processes. Um, in the AI world, there are two main types of compute. One is AI inference, the other one is AI training. AI inference is actually very similar to Bitcoin mining. So that's a workload based compute. When you send a workload to a server, you usually receive your response within a few seconds. And after that, you have nothing to do with that server anymore. Like you can stop there. The second process, which is like the AI training, that's more of a process based compute. The process could take anytime between few minutes, few hours, few days, few months. So for each of these types of compute, the strategies are different.
Okay. Where do we start? The first and foremost, you're active in which states in the US?
We are mostly focused on ERCOT and PJM, which means Texas and Ohio, Pennsylvania, like that
Okay.
area.
And then you basically, from my understanding, you still run the pool, right? And then you have
Yes,
the energy strategies as an additional revenue stream, right? So
exactly.
what I would like to understand first and foremost is how much savings are there to be made? Like if I didn't use your service versus using it, what's the difference? Is it like a 5% difference or 30%? Give me an idea of how big of a difference it makes.
It depends on the industry, right? There are industries out there whose biggest capital expenditure, sorry, operational expenditure is energy, such as Bitcoin mining. So in Bitcoin mining, usually 70-80% of the cost is because of like operational cost is because of energy. In that case, it really matters what energy you use, how you source your energy, what's your cost of power. That's the most important KPI in your business. So if you are not managing the flow of energy in your data center or for like Bitcoin mining operation, you are losing big. Like our analysis shows like for certain types of machines, that number could be as high as 70% of the profit margin that comes from energy strategy rather than Bitcoin mining.
Wow. Okay. And what miner should get in touch, Medi? Like what size makes sense? I know there's something in ERCOT called 4CP, which you only qualify for after 1 year. Like, give me a high level profile of the Bitcoin miner that comes to you where you can add the most value.
It very much depends on the like utility and the region that they operate at, but usually the the threshold is around like half a megawatt or 250 kilowatt ish, where you start being dealt like with as a wholesale energy off taker,
Mm-hmm.
and where you get exposed to wholesale energy markets and you become part of all those programs. So technically, if you are operating a Bitcoin mine larger than half a megawatt, you should start caring about your energy strategy for sure.
Okay, wow, that's early. I figured it was going to be like 5 megawatts or something. Um, I mean, that's how many machines? 50, 40?
100 ish, 120,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
depending on like how big the machines are. I mean, those power ratings are changing
Okay.
too
And
fast these days.
what is the core of the energy strategy here, Midi? Like if you I mean we all know this, right? If energy prices spike, you want to turn off your miners. There's an automatic incentive where the break even price for power goes beyond or the power price goes beyond the revenue per kilowatt hour that your mining farm makes. So it makes sense for you to turn off, but you might not know that initially. There's also mandates to switch off irrespective of price. Like yeah, maybe give me a bit more practical background as to what you actually manage and what you look for in the energy market to help a miner optimize their energy consumption and avoid a big power bill that sends them into the winter that they never come back from. This episode is sponsored by Hashbranch, the easiest way to mine Bitcoin in the US. Sourcing hardware and rack space usually is a mess. Bad deal structures, misaligned incentives, and no visibility after deployment. I have placed tens of thousands of ASICs in partnership with Hashbranch. What I like most is that they cut through the noise. Fair pricing, aligned terms, and access to hosting that actually works. Use code HashrateUp100 Visit hashbranch.com today to get $100 off of each miner that you order.
So when you are operating a flexible load, such as a Bitcoin mining data center, there are many things that you should care about that will create your energy strategy. As you mentioned, one of those important layers is being responsive to real-time prices. One problem of being responsive to those prices is, uh, in contrast to batteries, Bitcoin mines or Bitcoin devices, those are very slow in response. They usually go offline very quickly, let's say within a few seconds or even like under like sub-seconds sometimes. However, the ramp up time is very, very slow. Like based on the model, that could take you 10 minutes to sometimes 1 hour in order to get the machine back to the right hash and right efficiency. So when you are speaking of being responsive to real-time prices, it's not as easy as that. Like, let's check if a statement, price bigger than this, shut down, price came back, like turn on. So you gotta be ready to make decisions if the curtailment is worth it. So that's layer number one. Like, given the fact that you are going to lose some uptime, you're going to lose some efficiency on the ramp up, and all those like related matters. The second layer that is more or less common across all energy markets in North America. I'm not much familiar with like anywhere else across the world, but in North America, you usually have to avoid the peaks of the grid. Some people call it 4 CP in some grids. Some other places it is called 5 CP, 12 CP, 1 CP, depending on where you operate
It stands for coincidental peaks, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Exactly. So it's coincidental peak. And technically, that is a coincidence. So the grid is asking you gamble on guessing when the peak happens. And if you could cut your energy usage during those peak hours, I'm gonna pay you back what you were paying as transmission cost. That's like what happens um, in Texas in ERCOT. Like in, for example, PJM, there are two elements to it. There is a capacity charge and there is a transmission distribution cost that both happen based on coincidental peaks. So that's also something else that is important. So you should be ready to guess the right hours and gamble on curtailing your operations. Um, there are solutions out there. However, usually they are too conservative. Like, let's say someone asks you that you should curtail when the peak happens. And what you would do, you will shut down your operations every day from 2 to 7. Fantastic. You have 100% chance of winning. But you're losing those uptime hours. What we do, what we help Bitcoin miners with is to minimize that downtime and be ready to pick the right uh, intervals to take their operation down. Why is it important? Because like 2 years ago, 2023, usually the peak of the grid happened exactly when the peak of price is happening. Because the grid was under pressure, a lot of people were consuming energy, like ACs are on, like everyone are consuming as much as they can. But as of 2024, a huge shift is happening in energy markets, especially in Texas. Like other regions, they're like more slowly seeing that happen. But in Texas, because of the growth in solar generation and growth in batteries, usually when the 4 CP peak is happening, the price is very close to zero. You heard me right. Sometimes the price is even negative. They pay you to stay on because the amount of generation could easily be a lot more than uh, demand. I mean, it can never go above the demand, but the availability of capacity is there. So as a result, the price actually goes very low. So it is important to be ready to respond to those peak events. Uh, there are two more layers, but let's chat it up right now,
Yeah, no,
and we
I
can.
was going to say, of course, you cannot generate more than you can consume, but you can send frequency beyond 60 and then the grid collapses, right? So there's an incentive to keep people online. But go ahead, talk to us about the other two layers.
So the third layer that people usually get on is called demand response. There are different types of demand response programs in different regions. Um, let's say there is emergency response service (ERS). There is responsive reserves. Um, so people usually classify them as more basic demand response programs that actually pay really well for operations that want to remain less sophisticated. But there is a fourth layer to it, and that is more advanced demand response programs, which are usually referred to as ancillary services. The difference of like demand response, the basic demand response, and ancillary services is demand response, you usually opt in for a period of, let's say, 3 months to a year. But in ancillary services, you actually have to opt in every day for the next day. So that's more of a sophisticated process, and you should be ready to participate in the market on a daily basis.
Mm.
What we do as a platform, we give people access to all the four and help them co optimize all these programs together in order to maximize their profitability. Usually, we talk about like an additional layer on top, like the fifth layer, we call it compliance. Um, so, when you are participating in any of these programs, Grid has certain expectations from you. You can't just be offline whenever you want. When you are being treated as a demand response resource, as someone who is out there to support the grid when the grid needs that, you can't just shut down your operation uh, arbitrarily, right? I mean, you have to be online and wait for the signal of the grid. So in that case, you need to comply with certain uptime requirements. So we also like support operations in order to comply with those uptime requirements.
All right, a lot to dig in there. What is the difference? So first question I have for you: how do you help miners become more responsive, turning on or powering load and bringing load online to the grid when you say that they are slow to ramp up again? Like, what does LōD do to optimize that?
We don't we don't make them faster, and we probably can't make them faster in getting the hash rate back on. But what we do, we enable them to filter out uh, one-off spikes. So let's say if a spike is happening, but that's just like for a, let's say, single data point spike, you definitely don't want to respond to that. So what you are trying to do is to avoid actual peaks, because let's say if that's a spike that happens only for 5 minutes, you are shutting down your operation for, let's say, 4 minutes of that 5 minute window, but at the same time you're losing that 40 minute that happens after
Yeah.
that.
Okay,
So you
so
got to be
you
ready
have
to filter out those events.
you help the miner make smarter decisions there. I mean, there's also ways to. I mean, you don't have a third party firmware that you keep running that integrates with the energy management. Do you?
No, we don't. And our approach is to be neutral. We support any firmware and try to implement the same strategy on any sort of firmware, either that's a factory firmware or that's an aftermarket.
Okay. Another thing that really interested me was the explain to me and the audience the difference in capabilities between AI inference loads and Bitcoin mining loads? Like, how do they differ when it comes to demand response?
So there are, let's zoom out a bit. Let's see data centers from a systems engineering point of view. A data center is a system similar to a diesel engine. A diesel engine has two inputs, fuel and air. So you have a control system that comes up with the right mixture in order to get the engine to operate optimally. A data center is more or less similar. Like, doesn't matter if that's a AI data center or Bitcoin mining data center. There are two main inputs for that data center. One is energy, the other one is workload. If you stop the flow of any of these two going into the data center, uh, you can manage the energy usage of the data center. I'm like mainly speaking about the workload based compute, by the way. So we initially discussed the two different types, workload based and process based compute. So this is for the workload based. Uh, Both for Bitcoin mining and for AI computing, you can do, for AI inference computing, you can do both of them. You can either manage the flow of energy by shutting down servers, or let's say adjusting the clock speed of servers, or you can just stop the flow of workloads going into that data center in order to get the energy down. And that's one of the similarities between AI inference and Bitcoin mining. Uh, Usually, the workload based systems are faster in responding to grid events. The energy based systems, it depends on many things. Let's say for Bitcoin mining devices, as I told you, like depending on the model, ramp down is pretty fast, ramp up takes a few minutes. In the case of GPUs, the ramp down and ramp up could happen faster relative to Bitcoin miners, even ramp down and ramp up, but at the same time, you're losing a lot of efficiency in the process.
Okay, so if I understand right, you said there's two ways to control the energy consumption. One is energy and the other is workload. And of course, as the miner, it's very tough to control the workload because it comes from outside of your control. Okay. So would that mean then, if you pull on that thread, does that mean that Bitcoin miners are no longer needed in large energy markets where AI is present, because AI can take over that role? I told you before we started, or before we hit the record button, right? I like to ask this question because I have no final answer. Either Bitcoin mining and AI work together, or inference, AI inference loads and Bitcoin mining provide the same service to the grid. Which one is it, do you think?
This is probably the answer to your question, and you're gonna get the answer once for forever. Uh, the demand for Bitcoin mining is a static. You can mine or you can receive as much workload as you want in each moment of time from the mining pool, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many devices that you have, you can just connect them to the mining pool. They will be assigned a search space to find the right number, the nonce number, and you can add as many Bitcoin mining servers to the network as you want. For AI computing, on the other hand, the demand is not unlimited. You have to have someone who wants to use your server in order to consume energy. So that's the biggest difference. If we ever could have, let's say, an AI marketplace that could become an like indefinite source of AI workloads, we can say AI has the same capabilities of Bitcoin mining. But in reality, it's not. If you look at the load shape of AI data centers, they are usually like a curve that very much depends on time of the day. Usually the peak happens around noon, depending on where the data center is located. But like during night hours, the demand is very, very low.
Mm.
Where Bitcoin mining comes in, Bitcoin mining could be a valley filling instrument that will co-locate with AI data centers in order to fill the valleys. So that's probably the biggest synergy between AI and Bitcoin.
HashrateUp is sponsored by solomining.de, the place to buy open source home and solo mining devices like the BitX. With about 20 watts of usage, these solo mining devices are perfect to play the lottery from home or from the office. Get 5% off with the code HashrateUp. Thanks to the legends at solomining.de for sponsoring the content. So it's a bit of both, right? The big reason why this matters, and I would love your comment on that, is because all the big interconnections in low risk areas of the world, such as the US for AI, where you need huge amounts of capex, right? So you can't go to Uganda and do AI on a hydro dam. All these interconnections are consumed already by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, whatever, right? So to qualify for those big interconnections, where you need to be able to satisfy or to comply with 95%, 98% uptime, I feel like there you need Bitcoin mining, in order for your load profile to qualify for it. That's where it fills the gap, as you just described. Would you agree with that statement, or would you see it differently?
So today, as we speak, it is not happening yet. Usually the data centers secure a capacity, let's say 10 megawatt, 100 megawatt capacity, but they rarely consume full capacity. However, at the same time, the data center business is very different than Bitcoin mining. They usually commit the capacity to someone. So they should be ready to serve the customer no matter what. However, in reality, they are, let's say, at 20, 30, 40% utilization rate. However, as the demand for compute is growing, that is about to change. And that will change. Let's say today, as we speak, there is around 4,500 megawatt of Bitcoin mining capacity in Texas. And there is around 3,300 megawatt of data center capacity in Texas. So Bitcoin mining is still a bit more. However, the data center capacity is growing at the rate of, let's say, 5 to 10% per quarter. And Bitcoin mining is more or less flat these days. So the demand for high performance compute will become a lot more than Bitcoin mining in a few years.
Yeah.
And when that demand comes in, let's say there is 10 gigawatt of demand for HPC, and that is so unpredictable how much of that 10 gigawatt will be consumed the next minute, literally. Like you have no idea what's going to happen. You can predict, but at the same time, it is very uncertain.
You can use AI to predict it, right?
Sure, but it's never 100%. But and the bad thing about AI computing, it is non-responsive to energy prices. Let's say in Bitcoin mining, we can very well predict the behavior of Bitcoin mining data centers because we know that the a strike price or the curtailment price or the break-even point for those operations is, let's say, around between $100 to $200 per megawatt hour, or 10 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yep. Oh.
In the case of AI data centers, that number is over $2,000 per megawatt.
I was going to say, yeah, it's so high that the power price never reaches that. So there's not that natural incentive. Not yet. I mean, let the competition do its thing. And then all of that changes again. There's also then there's so many threads to pull on. There's so many ways you can take this conversation, and we could probably talk about it for 2 hours. Because now my brain is thinking about um, the increase in competition for AI, that pressure on the power price for Bitcoin miners drives Bitcoin miners out. Like, it's such a fluid um, market, because it's always about the equilibrium between demand and supply in energy markets. And I feel like it's so interesting to watch in a place like ERCOT, because there you have very, very, very little regulation, and that
Mhm.
real-time equilibrium can just keep on doing its thing, right? Also,
Yep.
the huge increase that you already highlighted of renewable energy, how does that play into it? um, and then again, yeah, people want the AI to work when they're awake, not when they're asleep. So it's all these mementos, I guess, for the lack of a better term. And I just looked while you were talking. I looked up the recent announcement. I mean, you already see TerraWolf working together with Google. Like, you start to see these interconnections between the two industries. And it's just going to be super interesting to see where it ends up. I would love to sort of get a regular um, update maybe from you to see in which direction it's headed. But maybe before we run out of time, um, I wanted to ask you also, as a pool operator, I wanted to ask you about your
Mhm.
opinions on network growth. Also with respect to what we just talked about, right? What do you think is network growth going to be like over the next 2 years, 3 years before the next halving comes? Do you think it's going to keep increasing, or is it the reason why I'm asking, right? And I discussed it in the last two episodes that I recorded 2 days ago and yesterday. The reason why I'm asking is because I have a lot of trouble finding a reason not to buy a miner right now, because I think it's very tough for the network difficulty to keep increasing with everything you just talked about from 900 exahash. It's tough to go up another 20%, um, when before it was only 200 exahash, right? It's all that power
Yeah.
that you now need more. What do you think about what I'm saying here? What do you forecast for network growth?
I think the network is going to grow and it's going to keep growing. However, 100 exahash 2 years ago was 50% of the network hash rate. 100 exahash today is just 10%. So the same amount of growth will have less impact on the profitability of Bitcoin mining. At the same time, we see that majority of large scale Bitcoin mining operations, they are pivoting into diversifying their energy portfolio. So we will probably less of Wall Street money coming into Bitcoin mining in the coming years, which is an opportunity for medium scale and smaller scale players to come in, knowing that there will be more lasting profitability for their investment. So I think, like, just to summarize, the growth is going to happen. More efficient miners are going to be deployed, but if we want it or not, the growth is probably going to saturate or move towards saturation in the coming years.
Hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree. Um, Last but not least, Mehdi, as an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur in me wants to know how you grew so fast. I mean, before we recorded, we talked about um, when we first recorded the first time. You guys were 5 people. Now you're 18. Now you've probably got the biggest, baddest background that any of my guests just had so far. It seems to go very, very well. Your pool has grown. So tell me, how did you achieve that? How did you achieve that growth with the rebranding and LōD?
So we started back in 2021 as a Bitcoin mining pool, initially very focused on a smaller scale pleb miners. That's what we were known for, and that's like what we are still known for. Like we are very popular among pleb miners, and we value them as our early stage users and existing users. But they gave us the platform to learn and experiment, and the feedback was really, really important that we received from them. Based on the feedback and the trends that we saw in the market, about 2 years ago, we had a pivot uh, to change our focus from growing a pool to growing an energy management platform. While like the energy management became the primary focus of the company, that was supporting the secondary product, which was the mining pool. That like helped us grow the mining pool to the scale. Like right now, across our products, not only the pool, we are managing somewhere between 3 to 4% of the network hash rate. 2 years ago, we were at like 0.1% of the network hash rate. And by the way, network hash rate grew by, I don't know, 100% in that period of time. Sorry, not 100%, like probably like a lot more. Um, so making the right decisions and making the right pivots was part of the growth. But at the same time, persistence was the biggest, I guess, factor. Because sometimes you make the pivot, say, okay, this sounds like a great idea, let's do it. And you do it. You don't see the results the first month. You don't see the results the first quarter. You don't see the result the first year, but all of a sudden you see the growth to flow. Um, so I would say making a smart decisions and being persistent has been the biggest driver for our growth.
Yeah, very, very, very awesome. Congratulations on that. I never, I don't recall at least, I never saw you do any raises or anything. It just grew very organically, I feel like, which is not often seen. And I think it's a huge achievement.
Thanks, Jesse.
My pleasure. Um, Miri, I have no further questions. Do you have anything else that you want to get off your chest?
Uh, Probably I want to talk to people about what we are getting prepared for as a company for the next stage of growth. Like we started as a Bitcoin mining pool, as I mentioned, we grow into energy management and operations management software, changing our focus more toward energy. Uh, Now, as a company, we are expanding our vision above and beyond Bitcoin mining. What we have learned and what we have built as a company in energy management industry is so unique and so valuable that we believe it can be used across many, many other sectors, including high performance computing and potentially some other energy intensive industries. Uh, as a result, we are growing our team, we are growing our product portfolio, and trying to implement what we have done for Bitcoin miners. For we want to do the same for AI computing. So we are introducing a new product called CLōD, CLōD by LōD. That's how we came up with the name, and that's going to be a lot focused on AI governance, governing AI computing around energy, around data security, around AI safety, and make AI computing as flexible as Bitcoin mining. That's the new vision and new growth angle that we are working on.
I hope that's another one of those decisions that bears fruit, my friend.
We are so patient.
Yeah,
Like
but that's
when I
but
started,
if I can just say something there, look, that's the beauty of growing organically, having a war chest,
yeah,
being able to try things out, not being chased by somebody else's money. You know,
yeah,
you sit back, you think what you want to try out, and then you do it as a team. And I mean, you have 17 other intelligent, smart people on your team that hopefully
yeah,
all will be able to tell you no when something is a really dumb idea, which is always helpful. But you know, it's really nice to see the growth there and what where you guys sort of started and what you guys are doing now. And once you have hit the road with that and it's out there and you have your first experiences, I would like to chat to you again and ask you the same question. You know, how does energy management differ between AI and Bitcoin mining, and what can Bitcoin miners learn from AI and vice versa. I think that's a very big discussion to be had, because now what's really exciting is, and I'm sure you followed the proto launch right now with Orodyne, and with the proto team. There's at least 2 teams out there already that really listen to the industry, and I'm sure you will have more than valuable insights from the AI data
And
center
also
industry
Seal
when it
Miner.
comes to
I'm
this
not sure
this
if
part of the industry.
you've heard about them.
Bitdeer, yeah, of
I'm not
course,
sure if
yeah.
you've heard about them.
I
Yeah,
had,
them too. Like on a daily basis, our team are working on integrating new machines and new
yeah,
Orodynes, new Seal miners. Hopefully, soon proto miners. Those are happening, and that's just adding more options for Bitcoin miners and more
yeah.
ways
Look,
for them to optimize their strategy.
yeah. All very positive. I'm very excited. Let's see. I hope it's not going to be another 2 years before we meet again. But as we said before, also 2 years feels like a decade. Let's see what the mining industry looks like in 2 years from now.
Excited to chat again soon. Thanks, Jesse.
Many, thank you for your time. Bye bye.